won't change. Where are we going to play is really the question, because it will change a lot about how this is actually going to pan out. These teams have very different map preferences, and as such, this ban phase is very important. We'll be going to Coastline for this match, which is, we haven't seen Coastline in a while, so at least I haven't.
Now, Coastline is a fragging match to be made for anybody, so this will be fascinating to watch. Both of these teams have no shortage of strong gunplay, and on a map like Coastline, you can abandon the idea of running a single hard breacher. A lot of teams will ban Hibana, and Maverick and Thermite are just not things that happen on Coastline. So if you're Canadian or if you're hot and cold, you have the opportunity to stretch your legs and play operators in a supportive capacity, but not being bound by possibly lackluster loadouts, bad guns, etc. You're still going to be doing a lot of droning for your teammates, because hot and cold and Canadian aren't necessarily going to pick up the torch and lead their team into battle. You're still likely looking at Hyper from DarkZero and Rampy from Spacestation as the two people who are going to be doing that as they go head to head with each other. But my oh my, there's going to be a lot of fireworks here. I would imagine between these teams, we saw it against Empire or the G2 Empire matchup last week. Even though it went very strongly in G2's favor, it was an explosive match with tons of gun skill being on display, and I suspect nothing less here for these two teams.
Coastline is actually a highly pivotal map for both of these teams at the Invitational. If we take a look at their performance at the Invitational, both teams got fairly far, but obviously Spacestation won. They are the world champions. DarkZero lost 4-7 in a best-of-3 to Ninjas in Pajamas on Coastline. That was a 2-0 for Ninjas in Pajamas, and that is ultimately how they got knocked out of the Invitational. So, it's a very important map for DZ in the past. And 7-4 is not terrible, I guess, but it's not great. If we're, granted, playing very well. On the other hand, Spacestation managed to beat TSM on Coastline 7-1. 7-1, that's crazy. That is a really dominant scoreline against a team like TSM. And granted, you get that dominant, and it becomes a point where, you know, it does have to do with TSM's map preference as well. Clearly, they do not like Coastline based on that performance, but it is a slightly better map, I'd say, statistically for SSG, just on recent performance. But we're pulling back to the Invitational, so that is a little bit far back at this point. Maybe that won't reflect what we see here today.
Yeah, there's two operators as well that are available that weren't available at the 6th Invitational, which is Kali, the sniper on attack, and Wamai, the gadget grabber on defense, if you want to call him that, with his magnets, functioning somewhat similarly to Jaeger, but not exactly the same. Both of them can see some play when it comes to this map, though I would suspect we'd see far more Wamai than we would Kali. That's just us speculating on this part. I imagine that Ashe is going to be a pretty crucial operator alongside Zofia on entry, IQ as well, Buck. Depends on the bans. We could see a Capitao or a Nomad get banned out. But before we get into the match and all of our theory crafting, what do you think? Because I'm sure all of you at home have thought the same thing, and it's very dominantly for Spacestation, 70% to 21% for DarkZero. These are two teams that enter as equals in terms of the standings. And while Spacestation has been on the ascendancy over the last couple months, I would have guessed it would have been closer than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty dominant community vote there, ladies and gentlemen. That is wow. For a match that could be as close as this one, I'm surprised. But who knows, maybe that will reflect what we actually see in-game. We finally got everybody ready, so we're going to go load into it. It'll be DarkZero versus Spacestation. DZ starting on attack Coastline. Now, something interesting to note is that both of these teams, I gotta say, they have almost identical ban phases on this map. Hibana will be banned, period. And probably Jackal or Lion. I would guess Lion, there it is. So there's Lion gone, and Hibana will be the other attacking ban, almost certainly here. As for the defensive bans, you're looking at Echo, Maestro, and Valkyrie, but both teams prefer to ban Valkyrie. So very certainly we will see a Valkyrie ban. That's done and dusted. You don't have to think about it. The only real question is, will it be Echo or Maestro? There's the Echo ban. Valkyrie should be our last ban here. If not, I would be shocked. But it's totally possible that with the new operator coming in, that changes. And yes, there it is. With Wamai in play, they get rid of a Maestro, so they don't have to worry about having to destroy those bubbles or Evil Eyes, because, you know, there's going to be Wamais in the way, there's going to be Jaegers in the way. You may as well just get rid of the problem child. So very different ban phase for both of these teams from their recent bans on this map on the defensive side. But apart from that, it's pretty much the same as what you'd expect. Everything on the attacking and Echo actually even was pretty predictable. The only change was the Maestro, and I think that's a direct response to Wamai.
This is weird here. The script that we got handed, because obviously all of this is pre-recorded, right? And it's all fake. The script here says that they banned Valkyrie, but they didn't. So I don't. Do we need to talk to an admin? I'm so help.
So the reason why
they didn't do what it said they were gonna do. It's written.
The reason why I expected them to ban Valkyrie, I'll tell you, is over the last three matches, I think, for DarkZero and 4 matches for Spacestation, both teams have prioritized banning Valkyrie. So the fact that she's made it in here is kind of surprising, to be honest. It definitely is a little bit of a left turn. But here we are, and ban phase done. Everything else did follow the script, so we're in line for that. And, you know, obviously we can just kind of roll with the punches.
For those of you that are taking this quite literally, it's a joke. So, you know.
What are you talking about, Parker?
It's
This isn't part of the script, Parker. You need to stop.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to cover. I'm just trying to cover for us.
Oh, nice shot there for Rampy, but he gets traded off, and there's action really early on in this match. A little bit of what we saw in the last one actually being reflected here. And there goes 2 of your primary soft destructors from DarkZero, just like that.
I'm a little surprised to see that, but yeah, that's rough. I mean, we basically called the operator lineup for DarkZero largely correct when it came to the Ashe, Sophia, IQ, and Buck. That pivotal 5th operator would largely come down to bans, and in this case, it's going to be, well, a Dokkaebi brought out by Mint. And DarkZero loves to run these annoying style of operators. The thing most people would classify Jackal, Lion, most shield operators, Dokkaebi as having gadgets that are designed specifically to get under your skin. And in this instance, Dokkaebi is going to do just that. There is a mute in play, though, for Spacestation, so those logic bombs will not be as irritating as they possibly could be. All you need to do is just simply sit on one of those jammers, and the effectiveness of Dokkaebi's gadget will go down, leaving what is really just an unremarkable set of weapons against a team that is going to be very well prepared for this. Now, despite them trailing in numbers, that won't slow down DarkZero at all. They'll entry from above and begin to take that map control, and we'll continue from there. Eclipse is on his belly, creeping up towards hallway, his presence given away by the whack at the barbed wire, now looking towards main lobby. Spotted for a second, Fultz can't connect. A beautiful shot from Eclipse, as now DarkZero have taken the advantage that SSG had and completely removed it.
I think it's worth noting that SSG, similar to what we were seeing in the last match on their defensive side, are bringing an operator lineup that forgoes the Mozzie, instead bringing a Wamai. And so you have less information denial on the attack side, but way more disruption on the throwables and the projectiles. But all that said, there's only 45 seconds left here for DarkZero to make their execution happen, but they are making it happen as they attempt to plant. Thinking Nate coming up on the flank after Eclipse gets the entry, and there's Skies from above covering very well, and the flank is stopped by this barricade. That's poorly positioned, I suppose, but you can't really predict to need to have it open in a situation like this. Whatever the case be, a 1v3, and it's not going to happen. Eclipse shuts down that flank. DZ will take round number 1. Very impressive comeback there from the early deficit in terms of man count.
They took what was a 4v3 and made it a 0v3. They didn't give up a single pick. And you got to think a lot of that really comes down to the duel that Eclipse and Fultz had. Fultz, I think, held off the trigger rather a little bit longer than he was supposed to. And because of that, he lost the fight to Eclipse. Once again, it was a beautiful shot from the IQ. at the doorway to kitchen leading into the main lobby, and with that you lost control of the backside of the site. DarkZero knew that they could just continue to take more map control away, and they left the buck of Skies upstairs. Nobody was going to be able to pressure Skies above, and when you lose control of VIP above you, kitchen becomes a nightmare to hold on to.
Yeah, it certainly does. And well, DarkZero really highlighting that for us in that match. I'm also really impressed by their ability to adapt to that flank from Thinking Nade, but that again I would mostly say comes down to the barricade on the door. Thinking Nade probably could have made that a 1v2 and possibly started working his way into the clutch. He is very good at doing that. But it is not to be. So, SSG going to change their bomb site. Mira is unbanned, so that's going to be a factor in this round. Mira, of course, is actually an operator that has kind of fallen out of favor. She gets banned quite a lot still, but even when she's not banned, sometimes she isn't played. When it comes to Coastline, though, she can be very, very useful, and I mean, that's fitting given that this is the map she came out with. So we'll see how Mira is used on this map in this match, rather. Looks like it's going to be primarily around the Sunrise Bar. Ooh, opportunity missed there for Thinking, but I mean, it wasn't really much of one.
I really like that Spacestation is bringing a Mira, even with how prevalent her bans tend to be. You know, in their clubhouse matchup 2 weeks ago, or rather 2 play days ago, God, it feels like I always default to when they used to be by the week, and yeah, I mean, I guess that's not the case. I should, with the way it is. I shouldn't be doing that. But
how long did we do that for? Like what, 2.5 years?
2.5 years, yeah. And then we got this accelerated super week became permanent, and then now we're doing 2 matches a week. So while it might be 2 play days, it's still on the same amount of weeks. But anyway, I was gonna say, we saw Bosco running this Mira when they played Clubhouse just a couple play days ago. So don't be too surprised here. There is a belief among teams that even when Mira goes unbanned, some teams don't run her because they don't practice with her. They don't have strats with her because they expect her to be banned all the time. So I like that Spacestation is going to continue to bring her. She was absent from round number 1, and she just gives so much visibility for the defenders and makes it perilously hard for the attackers to take anything, especially if it lacks a long-range hard breach. And, Hibana's banned. She is one of the best counters to Mira, so there's going to be a lot of value that I'd imagine Spacestation will be able to get from just having a Mira and nothing else.
Easy, committed to the office take. They've got the blue bar open. Oof. Imagine if he had sprayed that window. Rampy coming up from luggage, trying to flank into Aqua. This might have been red, but it's going to be the Jaeger to win the fight. Thinking Nade, a beautiful shot onto Houghton. And the execution from DZ is coming into A now. They're going to try and go for a plant, but there's the mirror window they have to consider. Plant goes close to the wall as a result. Will the coverage be in is the real question. They need to be very careful with how they cover this. Guys, holding onto Aqua balcony. The plant stopped by Faults with a shotgun. That's what happens when you plant close. Faults on the mirror window gets a second. And SSG are repelling this attack adeptly. Skies and Hyper now in a perilous situation. 30 seconds to go. No diffuser in hand. 4 enemies to find. It doesn't seem very winnable.
Their position's just been given away as well, with Hyper taking a couple shots into pink. They're just waiting to see if he'll walk out, in which case it should be very simple for Thinking Nade to just walk up and get the kill. The puck will rotate. He wins the fight, but there's Thinking Nade, still same position. Right next to him, the wall will blow up. Hyper will need to retreat. 10 seconds for him to be able to go and grab that diffuser, which is right in the middle of the Lion's Den. And if you're Space Station, you don't even need to go for the frag, but threading the needle with those shots is Thinking Nade, and Space Station will answer back. That Mira proving to be so invaluable for SSG's defense, and the Warden coupled alongside of it, working out very well. Warden can obviously see through smokes. He's resistant to flashbangs, and when his gadget's active, he can stop a plant dead in its tracks. Fultz played it well, and of course, as I pointed out, and everybody will point out, when a Mira is available and you take it, she is going to give you a huge wide angle right into the site, and that's exactly what it did. Even though DZ came so close to being able to get that diffuse down, SSG just had the counter lined up perfectly.
Yeah, the word I always like to use to describe Mira as an operator is she's polarizing. She is night and day between playing with or without her. And she can have that effect on a round to good or ill of the defenders. So in this case, it was to their benefit that they brought the Mira. It worked really well. It managed to force a plant in a location that was very exposed for DZ. And, you know, who knows? Maybe they would have tried to plant there without the Mira in play. We've seen DZ do that same exact plant before in the past on Coastline. And it almost never works out for them. Sometimes it does, but very rarely. But all the same, it ended up working for SSG. So the right operator picked there. And yeah, I mean, it was a different round than usual. And you know what? That's the thing that we're, I think, noticing with not just North America, but most regions, is that we're seeing not necessarily the meta change every day, but we're definitely changing in a much more accelerated rate than we had in the past. It used to take whole seasons for basic playstyles to change from one team to another. And now it feels like it happens every other week.
Activating drone.
And it doesn't just come down to like the Mira. I mean, it comes down to pretty much everything that we're seeing here. Like the Wamai is changing the operator bands for SSG and DZ. Valkyrie is available. When both of these teams, Valkyrie is their primary ban on this map. And that's just because Wamai is going to soak up so much that you have to remove the Maestro, or you're not going to be able to destroy them.
Imagine what some of the teams will do when they have a Wamai and a Jaeger together, and then you've got a Maestro and a Goyo available. When you see teams run that might as well be the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse when it comes to just any kind of any major destruction, either thrown or tossed, because they'll soak up so much. And yeah, if you throw a frag grenade in, the magnet's still going to make it blow up, but it's not going to be where you intend it to go. So very smart decision. And when people are thinking to themselves, you know, why would SSG, who has probably one of the best Maestros in North American Pro League, maybe even in the world, in Fultz's hands, why would they deliberately take out one of their greatest operators? And you just explained it perfectly for them, because you're going to allow DarkZero to be able to capitalize off of an operator paired alongside Wamai, who's going to make your job as an attacker extremely difficult. But it looks like there's been a clear path in, as a frag grenade will drop down right onto the feet of SSG, and Hyper will start things off, but Eclipse will not be able to get out of harm's way before Rampy makes him pay. Both teams will lose one. SSG will get the upper hand, though, as they remove Hot and Cold. Down goes the Zofia, her stuns so crucial at being able to lock down the site. Some damage done to SSG as there's a fight from above, and there will just be a brief pause as its controls still above for the attackers.
SSG just going to wait this out. The smoke, highly relevant in this round, will be the reason why this wasn't a plant for DZ already. Skies gets Rampy upstairs, but it's not a full clear of the top floor. Canadian still roaming. Guys needs to be wary of that. So does Hyper. Meanwhile, they have to consider the plant. Nice shot from Hyper. There goes Canadian, but Fultz responds. He's keeping his team in this with a run out from Exit. Suddenly, it's going to get worse for him, though, as he's shut down by Hyper, who gets his 3rd kill. Bosco, the hero of the early round, has to be the hero of the late round now, too. And he gets Hyper, shutting down his spree. It's a 1v1. Skies versus Bosco, and the push is into Kitchen for Skies. He knows where his enemy is, but the rotation from Bosco is very well read. And Skies doesn't have Diffuser. He won't be able to plant. He doesn't have time. It's going to be a win for Skies! Incredible throw from Bosco! DarkZero will take the round off of just an open wall and a free range for Skies.
It's one of those times I'd love to see the bullpen for DarkZero, as that was almost 100% for Spacestation, 99.9%. If you had one of those graphs that are charting how likely it is that a team is going to win the round, that's sitting at 99.9% for the final 10 seconds or so, and then just immediately drops, and, well, it goes down to 0. Bosco, all you need to do is just sit and wait. I don't know if they just simply lacked intel. Keep in mind that there was an IQ for DarkZero. Maybe SSG didn't have any cams inside a site. Maybe they were just blind and they had no intel on where the buck was. There was a cat and mouse game that was going on inside of the main lobby, and obviously Bosco got caught. He just wasn't cheeky enough. He wasn't elusive enough. It's a major bit of misfortune for Spacestation, because right now they should be the ones leading in terms of round count, but Skies does what Skies does best, which is just show up huge in the final 20 seconds of a round. Bosco literally could have just sat somewhere and waited, but if he was getting the call from somebody on his team that they were planting, or he assumed that they were planting just simply on his own, then you can't really fault him for maybe trying to go back in as the timer was about to hit 0. That's a really tough spot to be in if you're Bosco, and we don't know if he just got a bad call or not, but it certainly seems like a massive misplay that allowed DarkZero to get the win on that.
Yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of different layers to what that could be. It could be premature celebration. It could be just expecting the plant, like you said, maybe a bad call. But what it was for certain is, well, a good clutch from Skies. Can't take it away from him. He had a second to make it happen, and he did. So props to Skies. 6-1 right now across 3 rounds. That's an average of 2 kills a round and only a single death. Skies is having a match right now, and he's feeling very comfortable.
Motivated and fired up Skies is something that is obviously very frightening for almost every team to go up against. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how good your gun skill may be. He's been able to duel along with the best of them, regardless of what his team is doing. And though one thing that's always made DarkZero really scary is that they've also got another player who's very similar to that in Hyper. Hyper has great statistics. He's been one of the highest rated players in North America for the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons. And then you've got even greater depth on DarkZero's side. You know, that's part of what has allowed DarkZero to flourish as much as they have, and it's been interesting to watch people, I guess, on fans of both Spacestation and DarkZero, talk about these teams, because there's been much chatter about the fact that DZ is more of an online team where they don't show up on LAN, whereas it's, you know, the opposite for Spacestation. Right now, you've got 10 people in the lobby who are very competent at showing up regardless of the stage that they're playing on. And even though this round has been quite slow, 1 or 2 picks could ultimately end up deciding the full pacing, and both teams are in a position to be able to take advantage of that.
I think the Invitational proved 2 things, one for each of these teams. One, Space Station is certainly a LAN team. They definitely perform well on LAN. I mean, they won the World Championship. Thing number 2, DarkZero is getting better at LANs, so that's worth keeping in mind too. In this here and now match, though, the aggressive play almost getting punished by Hyper there. Skies elsewhere will get Canadian. Space Station the entry kill, and there's another for Hyper who just waits on the angle and wins the fight against Fultz, who's peeking for some reason. Space Station already losing 2 to the entry from DZ, and there's no response from the C4. In fact, another for Hyper, but he finally gets shut down by Rampy, who's in a 1v5. Make that a 1v3 as he gets 2 in quick succession. C4 from below, too late. The plant has already gone down. Now 40 seconds for Rampy to find 3 and clutch it up. He hears one on Repel. There's the IQ, and there she goes. Eclipse down. C4 will not hit anyone as the last 2 DZ players are playing this post plant far afield and as smart as they possibly can. Retake from Rampy over towards Luggage. He has to check his right corner here, and he's got a possibility to win. He will, and he gets the kill. Incredible. The crossbow giving away Mint's location. A 1v1 now, but only a few seconds for Rampy to get this. It's a nice try, even if he doesn't, though. Only a few seconds, and here's the rush. He cannot get it any longer. No ace for Rampy, no defuse right after, and DZ will win the round.
I actually wonder how close it would have come if Rampy had just stuck it, because he was about halfway through before he fell off. I mean, not that I think it really would have decided the round, but I mean, stranger things have happened. It was very clear that Hot and Cold had full information, and he pressured at the right time with the way the walls were carved out. You're going to be able to hear that diffuser being disabled by the defenders, so you know that Rampy's in that position. You can't hug that bomb chassis tight enough so that you're not exposed either from the rotate hole, or if it's just a greater push into hookah, or from hookah into billiards itself. Rampy obviously masking the major deficiencies that we saw from Space Station, which was that they peaked. You pointed this out. They peaked multiple times right into Hyper, who was just on Repel in the double window watching billiards. That's not usually a very strong position to be, especially if you're not on upside down Repel. Most of those kills that we saw from Hyper were him literally just sitting in the middle of the window, playing around the window frame. That's a very easy spot to challenge, and it took Rampy quite a bit of time to be able to get down below and do so from inside of a Sunrise bar. But man, there was just mistake after mistake committed by SSG. It's 2 rounds now that SSG has needlessly given up picks. Obviously, in this, in round number 3, it decided the entire round. at the very last second, but I think you could make a pretty compelling argument that the picks that were given up by Spacestation early in round 4 were equally as important to decide that round, albeit with a lot more time on the clock.
Attackers are heading out.
This has been a very interesting match for SSG, but I think the clear-cut thing that we're noticing here is that SSG are making quite a lot of mistakes, at least on their defensive half so far. We're not done quite yet here with that half. We've still got this and another round right after for SSG to prove that they're capable of defending on Coastline. But it's not boding well, as Hyper gets the leadoff kill onto Fultz, of all people. That's your Doc gone, which means that, well, all of the HP he can provide to your team is now just disappeared, as well as Fultz as an individual player, being the amazing player that he is. Well, his gun's going to be quiet. It'll wait on the floor for the next round to start. So that right there is, I guess, a prime example of those unnecessary peaks and unnecessary picks that DZ are being allowed to acquire, as there's no response from SSG. It doesn't seem like Fultz was set up to, in any particular location, to stop a push. It wasn't a sunrise hold. So it's just, okay, Hyper's got a kill. Now DZ are in the lead.
In Fultz's position when the last time we saw Spacestation go to Kitchen was playing inside a main lobby, and he held that long angle towards the doorway from Sunrise into Kitchen itself. That's obviously an angle that will need to be covered by somebody else. It looks like from Spacestation they've moved Canadian over there, but the MPX is not the same gun as an MP5. It's not going to do the trick in quite the way you want it to. So Hyper might be able to just breeze on in, as it appears that most of Spacestation have been pushed deep back inside of the site. They're on the east end of the building. They're over by that delivery door, the service door, which leaves A largely free. And if there's nobody from SSG playing above, unless SSG are able to reposition themselves, DarkZero could be able to walk in and get a plant down very quickly while the remaining members just simply watch. That looks like it's going to be the plan, but there's a smoke that gets tossed out. Mint and Hyper will get cut off. Mint's attempting the plant, as you can't see anything from Hyper. There's one for Rampy, but he'll get picked apart with Eclipse and Skies getting in on the fun. Still an advantage for DarkZero, as these numbers will continue to trade down. It will favor DarkZero, as they had an advantage to start with, and trading will not simply be enough for Spacestation. They're going to need to muster out a good pick here. Another smoke goes down with Hot and Cold assessing the situation. Skies has the cross into Courtyard. He'll find Thinking Nade. And Bosco in a dire situation right now. A nice shot and a nice angle shrugging off of the Zofia. Mint gets the plant down, and Bosco is still just trapped inside of service. He's known for getting some absolutely heroic plays, and he'll need to do more than just take Mint out of action. As you see the scramble after the diffuser is down from DarkZero, a single member will go upstairs. He's going to get marked away. Bosco expends the clip of the SMG-11 and will just go for the defuse. But there's a buck up there. They'll be able to open this up, and a drone inside of sight as well, as it's both members of DarkZero putting in good work, but Sky's credited with the kill onto Bosco, as that was a lose-lose situation for SSG. There's simply too much soft destruction that Bosco wasn't able to watch all at once, and it's quite an impressive lead for DarkZero, as they are up 4-1.
You know, I gotta be honest, I'm feeling a little bit bad for Rampy right now. The reason I say that is I would still call him the MVP of that last round, despite the fact that his team lost the round. And here's why. He not only managed to get one cover player, one of the flank watches for the defuse plant inside a kitchen, but he also stopped the initial attempted plant. There's also a really impressive performance put up by Bosco playing the smoke in sight. He also was integral to stopping the plant, and he, as an anchor, managed to stop the push into kitchen itself for a prolonged period of time. So Bosco and Rampy really putting up some impressive performances.
Defenders,
and
Rampy,
again, Rampy got more out of dropping into garden than 90% of players would in that situation. Not only stopping a plant, but also getting a player who was on flank watch. He should have just died. He should have just died, and he managed to do so much more. And that's discounting, of course, that's forgetting about the round where he got the 4K in the round prior. And yet, these performances, this level of contribution, is not being met by the rest of SSG. We're not seeing full, I guess, SSG performance. We'll be going back to the double bar, which is the only site that SSG has managed to win thus far. And it's going to be a similar setup here with the Mira on the blue bar. But the question is, will DarkZero really play into that again? Or are they going to try something different? I imagine that they're going to adjust a little bit.
I like that SSG are willing to switch it up, though this does look like the same lineup that we saw last time on the double bars, except there's no Warden in play for them. It'll instead just be a smoke in the hands of Holtz. I think DarkZero will have to change it up. They're not going to go for the same style of play. It's the only site, in fact, that Spacestation has won on, and a big part of that was that DarkZero didn't really address that mirror window that was inside of Sunrise Bar looking into Blue Bar. If you can tackle that obstacle as DarkZero, then Spacestation end up finding themselves having to hold the back of Sunrise, or at least clinging to that second floor. The one thing that we have seen really, really well from DarkZero, or at least see them do really, really well, is take control of the second floor. DZ has been so strong at just keeping their foot on the throat of Spacestation because of that second floor control. Being able to take away the entire roof, being able to hold down on roamers, not needing a Nomad or a Gridlock for flanking, that's been DarkZero's specialty so far.
Guys in particular is on a tear, and he's also playing Buck. If he gets above, he could do a lot of work. 10-2 right now, guys. That's pretty crazy 5 rounds in. It is vertical control established for DZ. They're also dealing with a lot of those information tools being brought out by SSG. IQ obviously going to be a mainstay pick. You have to really bring her these days. And it's been the way for a long time, but you know. So getting rid of the Valkyrie cams, opening up from above to deal with the mirror windows. DC has gone through the steps this time instead of just trying to rush in for a smoke plant. C4 will detonate and do a lot of damage to Houghton, but no kill. And the execution is going to come in the next few seconds or so. They're not rushing it.
There goes some of the safety of the wall that was next to the mirror window with Hot and Cold just dumping in those lifeline blows by blow. And, well, it doesn't look like the fire did an awful lot, at least not what DZ was hoping for. Bosco just likely through the smoke takes out Mint, and now SSG have the control that they want. Skies bursts into action. He's got the smoke there with him. 2 members of his team able to put in the work that they need, and they will abandon that diffuser from going down. So DarkZero do not have to worry about the objective, at least not yet. Missed opportunity for the Twitch above. Sky still alive near the site. He'll gun down Foltz, but it's Spacestation doubling up on the lone remaining member of DZ. 20 seconds, and he's going to have to continue to exert some pressure. He can't land the shot. Some missed opportunity from him. You don't see Skies do it all that often, but unfortunately for him, it comes at the worst possible time. Bosco plays that one well enough, and the double bars will be the only successful defenses for Spacestation as we swap sides, and DarkZero moves to defense with a 4-2 lead.
So I just got to say, I am very impressed by SSG's defensive setup on the double bar. So they've got a couple different things going on there. Thing number one, the mirror window setup. I really got to appreciate how thought out it is, because it's not just a mirror window looking into Blue Bar. It's a mirror window looking into Blue Bar with contingency plans, such as the peek from that window deep in Sunrise Bar to cover the blue window. That's an easy denial of the attacker's flank watch inside of blue. Now, on a lot of sites, you're going to have those positions like the main window repel on billiards, for example, when defending that site, that are really difficult for the defenders to deal with. And it's the same exact window that you would use to deal with that repel that you would use to deal with the blue window repel. It's this one right underneath the camera right now. And that double angle allows the mirror window to continue applying pressure to blue. But that's not the only thing that Spacestation had on their double bar setup that was so impressed me. The main thing, I would say even, is not just the mirror setup, but rather the top floor setup. Because it wasn't a top floor hold directly above the bomb site. They opened up the entire top floor, all of the walls, the hookah walls, the same way that DZ's doing it right now, although I'd say that SSG was a little bit more thorough. Not that it matters too much. Anyway, they opened up all of those walls, then played the roam elsewhere on the top floor to allow for a late in the round retake of the top floor. And what this means is the attack spends so much time clearing out above the bomb site, and then once they've done that, when they start attacking into the bomb site, the roamers start applying too much pressure to those players above, and then the attack finds themselves at a man disadvantage. And that's exactly what happened to DZ in that last attack. Despite how well DZ themselves played that, they almost brought it back, but the setup was too good for SSG, the advantages were too numerous, and so SSG took the round.
And they did so with very minor changes over the very first time as well. It was DZ who didn't adapt the way that they wanted. Now, Speaking of DZ, they find themselves in the crosshairs of Thinking Nade, and they give up their very first pick here on their defense. Not the start that you want from DarkZero, and it happens to be Hyper, usually one of the standout performers for this team. He gets a little bit greedy and peeks the window from Luggage on a balcony, and he finds himself dying to the Nomad of Thinking Nade. More discovery work, this time down below, as Spacestation are trying to determine the location of Eclipse and be able to do something to take the Ella out of action. But not too far off is Sky's playing on the Mozzie, and, well, he can come to his teammates' aid should the need arise. Instead, Skies, though, has now found his way over towards Cool Vibe stairs, and Rampy from above is likely going to take away some of the safety the defenders find down below. This is exactly what you expect a Buck to do. Doing their best SSG impression, but this time without the mirror. It'll be DarkZero starting this first defense on the double bars. Full top floor control right now for Spacestation. This is where you want to find yourself with an attacker, as an attacker, with over half of the round gone.
Yeah, and also one of those roamers being dealt with. That means that when the retake comes from DZ, it'll be significantly less powerful, really. DZ also being approached from exit. So it's the same setup from DZ, and it's a very different attack from SSG as we transition through the halves. That's a lot of damage done to Houghton, but he's not dead yet. There he goes. Rampy with amazing situational awareness, and he's looking for a second. Amazi caught in the hallway. Nade comes out. This looks like DZ is being absolutely manhandled on this defense. Firebolts to cut off rotation. The top floor control still in there. It's Canadian going down with the diffuser, but it doesn't matter because SSG already has such a man advantage. It will be swept up there in the end. SSG, great cleanup, and they will win their first round of the second half.
Honestly, a very valiant effort from DarkZero to retake, especially through the blue bar, but there was just too much utility for them to try and wade through, especially with the smoke stopping their line of sight and ending up exactly where SSG was hoping that they would. Additionally, that one main rotate between Sunrise and blue bar being held off by the fire arrow that was on the ground and spreading. Skies tried to duck to cover inside of that deployable shield, couldn't make it there. We saw the Ella of Eclipse try the same thing, couldn't make it there. SSG just had a lock on the one part of the map that allowed them to leverage that map control over the rotate that DarkZero had set up, which is a very common rotate on both a Sunrise and a blue bar defense, because you want to be able to get between the sites as quickly as possible. So immediately after losing it, though, it appears that DarkZero will abandon that, and I think there was a couple things to really point out in that round. I think he did a good job of assessing it and the setup that there was as well. But I think for DarkZero, after they lost Hyper above, DZ were, I think, very deliberately not trying to engage the Ash and the Buck of SSG on that second floor. And unfortunately for them, they weren't able to just kill enough time. It really allowed SSG to set the pace for that round. And because you had Rampy up there, basically destroying the entire floor, because you had Fultz up there droning for him and being able to lock down the remaining corridors, they could be very leisurely. They didn't really feel any pressure, and they didn't need to worry about somebody from DarkZero lurking in the wings.
I just noticed that we have currently two players. Apparently they're putting their heads together and starting up a donut factory, because Mint and Canadian have yet to contribute to the scoreboard, and we're getting close to ending this match. So doesn't bode well for either team, but if, I guess it's one on each team, right? I'd like to stress again that kills are not everything, but when you've got someone like Skies performing as well as he is, then he contributes quite a lot. And when you've got people who aren't getting anything in terms of kills, then that does change the way the game plays out. Fultz has made his way into Cool Vibes stairs, and he's cut off the rotation, but he'll be spotted and finished off by Skies. Look at that awareness. Must have been footsteps. I don't know, maybe it was the default cam coming on at the right moment, but DZ had the info, and Skies was there to punish the push from Fultz.
Very unlucky timing for Fultz. He could have gotten the better of Skies there. It was a nice flick, but just not enough. Now Skies will trade out 75 HP, which he'll be able to get right back from a stim pistol or two. And there he goes, healing himself back up to tip-top shape. He's got lucky number 13 frags so far in 8 rounds. That is a very strong performance from a single person. Now, he's going to rely a lot on the rest of his teammates. I don't know if Eclipse just didn't hear part of the roof get torn above him by that skeleton key, but he very narrowly loses his head to Rampy before he's able to get away safely. SSG all the while have been able to take control of Sunrise Bar. And there you go. The default cam was still up, Michael, so it does appear that that would have been what gave away Fultz, allowing Skies to be able to swing on out.
So it hasn't been, or that hasn't been recovered yet by SSG. There are some opportunities, as you can see, for picks. You got somebody in the main lobby. There's a very heavy roam currently from DZ. 2 anchors, I think. Possibly 3. But lighter, yeah, 2 anchors. And then 1 player in the main lobby, that's Skies. So SSG's got some chances here. But it's Jaeger, actually, Mint, to position himself at the bottom of main stairs. He's going to be a really important operator in the engagement to come, because he might be unexpected for SSG. Hyper covering his top of main stairs. And here comes the execution from SSG. Firebolts will push Skies, but not enough. And, oh, he hits the shot! Incredible! Thinking Nade, barely visible thanks to the light outside, still loses the fight to Skies. Min gets his first kill, and Skies gets his second in this round. Bosco now alone. Correction, actually, third in this round for Skies. But Bosco's still in a 1v5. He's going to have to do some serious magic if he wants to win this one. 20 seconds left. It's not seeming likely. He has to deal with one of his enemy's drones now. Checking inside a kitchen just to be thorough, but Hyper through the wall gets the final kill, and it's a flawless round for DarkZero.
Yes, more of that, please. DarkZero fans obviously rejoiced as the chances in that round of Spacestation winning go dark very early on, and they were so slow to get inside of Kitchen, and it was actually very different from what we saw of DarkZero. DarkZero, when they were attacking Kitchen, were very quick to get control of VIP, very quick to get control of Hookah, and then move over and sit on top of VIP while you didn't really have anybody from SSG pressuring you inside of the Sunrise Bar. Obviously very different this time. SSG were far more lined up inside a Sunrise Bar. You know, it took, or DZ were rather, it took SSG quite a while to get control that they wanted. They never really seemed to have what they needed above, as Rampy's focus was inside of Hookah, not VIP. So a challenging spot to find yourself in if you're Rampy, because obviously the plan is let's flush out Sunrise. You know that DarkZero is playing down there. We saw Eclipse hanging out in that general location with Sky sitting by the doorway in the kitchen as well. You can open up most of Sunrise. That means that if you hit the back end of the site, when somebody gets pushed from the front of Kitchen over to Sunrise, you're very capable of catching them at the top. And that's where I would imagine we were going to see Rampy play, but we didn't quite get there, as it was DarkZero just beating them to the punch in those gunfights. So, while the double bars weren't successful for DarkZero, Kitchen is, and they'll go upstairs to Hookah. So while double bars are still open, I guess that experiment only lasts 1 round, and, well, if you're successful here as DZ, you're probably going to see them go back there, because the only other option would be Penthouse Theater. But the way that you defend those 2 bars will be somewhat similar to what we see here on Hookah. Not exactly the same, but it's control that's above the usual site. Watch for the way that DarkZero plays off-site, possibly over by Aqua or even over by Luggage, as a main difference between the way that they defended the double bars up top.
Yeah, that double bar setup is really interesting. And I want to know who started it, because both of these teams were using it. It's definitely a very unique way of holding the bomb site, but Hookah Billiards has actually not been played too much, to my recollection, through this match. It's been kind of overshadowed by Kitchen and Double Bar. Right now, SSG's just looking to get the right angles into Cocktail Bar, but it's going to come slowly. Nothing really too crazy going on right now, apart from the way that SSG's clearing out. Well, not really crazy. They're clearing out very thoroughly on the other side of the top floor to be sure they have control everywhere but the bomb site. And it looks like they're going to set up for Aqua. No hold for Aqua from DC. That's a little bit strange, but it's totally understandable. You can easily lose too many bodies there for no reason. And so that control will be easy for SSG to take. And that'll give them the platform they need to attack onto the bomb site.
There's a frag grenade primed and ready, and there it goes. Does it hit its target? Yeah, it does, but Skies is still able to survive despite it. There is a dock for hot and cold. He's going to need to try and get Mint and Skies back to a higher HP than they are currently seated at, but It's not exactly a certainty. Both of them get a single stim pistol. Congratulations, Mint. You are the lucky beneficiary of stim pistol number 3. Still, the inability to stop these drones right now is going to cost DarkZero in the long run. There's just under a minute left, and these DZ members don't seem to realize that they are very much being watched. Another frag grenade goes out. This time it doesn't do as much damage. It looks like it did a tiny bit to Skies. It actually looks like it did more to Rampy than it did to any member of DarkZero. So now DarkZero can sit quite pretty and just wait. A lot of this gadgetry from SSG has been utilized. There's the very first kill from Bosco. So, Spacestation, with just a tiny bit of time left, are going to find themselves with an advantage, but now they're going to have to confront the play that's inside of the bar up top. That's exactly where a smoke is going to thrive. Still one toxic canister with 10 seconds left. Skies can make this work if he really wants to. Guns down one as Canadian finds a kill, but DarkZero finds 2 of their own. Yet another from Canadian, answered by Fultz as he's in, and it's Mint in a 1v3. Diffuser is going down, not near default spot. Mint is going to just fire into the ground fruitlessly, with the diffuser for Space Station being successful, and a return to site from the Jaeger being given away, and all 3 members of Space Station watching Cool Vibe stairs quite intently, intending to deny Mint time back to the site. And it's Thinking Nate who gets picked right back up with the very final kill. Space Station is going to keep this one close, but DarkZero will still lead its Titan 5-4.
That was a really methodical execution from SSG. The one thing that I noticed in particular is that we had Thinking Nate playing by Vase, holding those blue stairs or Cool Vibe stairs for the majority of that round. He inserted himself into Vase and he held that angle dead solid. He knew that was his job, and he executed that really well. He did get downed, actually, I believe, somewhere in the middle of that engagement, but he was committed to his task. And what that tells me and what it tells us is that it was a methodical execution from SSG. They had a clear-cut plan. They knew what they were getting themselves into. They knew what they needed to hold and how to hold it and where to go as individuals. And thus, since they did it in unison, they did it as a team. And that is a great execution, very well highlighted there by SSG. So, DZ had a good chance of taking that one. I'd say if they had more versatility in the kit of a player who is by the main bar or the cocktail bar or whatever you want to call it, then it might have been a very different round, because that was, if I'm not mistaken, Skies, and he was playing with an SMG 11 in hand, and he really didn't have, no, it was Hyper. I can't remember. Whoever it was, they were playing by the cocktail bar, SMG 11 in hand, and they really didn't accomplish as much as they could have. The main problem was the low ammunition count on that SMG 11. We saw him get up and attempt to retake by base, and that's because he had the shotgun. If he had something with 30 bullets, very different round. And sometimes it's little things like that that'll change the outcome of your rounds. And it's another, situation where, oh boy, if we had a Maestro there, maybe. Too bad DarkZero banned that.
I was going to say, that's Maestro being banned is a crucial operator here, and obviously we talked about how he works well coordinated with Wamai, when he's well coordinated with Wamai. So, I mean, you want to soak up that utility as best you can. Well, DarkZero isn't actually bringing a lot of operators to soak up utility at all. I mean, take a look. Other than a couple deployable shields that are available and have been brought in a couple of these rounds, there's no Jaeger on the board, there's no Wamai on the board, there's no Goyo being brought, so DZ is really giving SSG plenty of space to be able to just dump in those lifelines, use those Capitao arrows to great effect, and just totally soften up the defense time and time again.
The big thing that the current lineups we're seeing being brought change is that it's more individual engagements. And again, I think that the Maestro by that cocktail would have changed a lot, because there was nobody focused on locking down cocktail, not directly at least. It was like a secondary focus for the attackers in that last round. But here in this round, we've only got a minute left after SSG take control of the top floor. They're going to start opening up from above. I don't expect this to accomplish too much, maybe a pick or two, but really, with the time constraints that SSG have right now, it's very likely that they're going to have to execute into a 5-on-5, especially with the way that DZ is currently set up. A run out from Hyper will net nothing. He will fall back, but his position is known. And if DZ has someone that far off site, then you can rest assured that they have a pretty extensive roam.
That first pick by Fultz is huge to give some more space to SSG. Frag grenade goes down. They weren't so successful for Space Station on previous rounds. Thinking nade with 2 could have been a collateral onto Eclipse and Hyper as both of them push up towards the top of White Stairs. C4 goes, and with it will Bosco's life. This will give just the Mozzie of Skies pinned down inside a pool as Mint falls as well, and it looks like it'll be a tie game with Skies a trapped, caged animal, and he's not even making it out at all. He doesn't get through the doorway before Fultz is there to greet him with the R4C, and both of these teams will need all 12 rounds. DarkZero needed almost every single round of every single match they played at the 6 Invitational. It was a joke that we actually brought up a couple times, and now Space Station has done the same for their online play. Well, history is repeating itself. Could we see another 7-5 for SSG as they've started off the second half of the split? It definitely seems likely.
Now, with the way that this is being played out right now, one thing is pretty clear. DZ doesn't know how to hold the double bar as well as SSG does. And more importantly, SSG's attack onto the double bar, despite these being the same strategy for the defense, the attack onto the double bar is just much more adept for SSG. They have a different thought process when it comes to executing onto the top floor that DZ did not show us in the first half. Thought process is take control of base, then start opening up from above. Because if you have base, you can cover your flank from the appropriate angles. So it's not just base 2, it's the pretty much the most of the top floor for SSG. And then they have the flank watch from Thinking Nade, the Nomad, who's going to put up those air jabs on the staircases and then obviously get, a double kill as someone attempts to retake on the main stairs. So SSG's more deliberate take of the top floor, clearing out the whole thing before applying vertical pressure to the double bar, is the difference maker here. It's the reason why DarkZero has not been able to lock this match out. It's because they don't have the ability to hold on to Kitchen, or rather, not Kitchen, double bar as a bomb site. And that is a serious hindrance considering how strong it was for Space Station in the first half. We're going to probably avoid double bar for the rest of this half, though. I don't imagine that DZ will bring us back there unless they think that they can make sweeping changes to their setup.
No, obviously not a very comfortable place to go, and that's what I speculated on was when we saw both Kitchen and Hookah get played. I said that we're probably not going to go to Penthouse or to Penthouse Theater should the DarkZero end up being successful on Hookah. Obviously not the case at all. So they fell apart.
Maybe we're gonna see Penthouse now that they can't defend double bar. Who knows?
That's a very good point. Though Hookah does open up next round, so we could just end up going back there. I mean, actually, Hookah's opened up right now. The only site that was locked was Kitchen, and it opened up. So every site is free to play for DarkZero at the moment.
Discovery we'll see if they want to take the risk or not. I was just gonna say that we'll see if they want to take the risk or not. It is, of course, a risk when you go to Penthouse, but we've seen it pay off in recent times.
No, absolutely. I mean, Mirror is available as well. The only thing you really need to hold on to at that point is lobby control, because we've seen time and time again when Mirror was available, somebody would open up the lobby and then the floor goes underneath you inside of theater, and then also you lose your Mirror windows. That is obviously not an ideal spot to find yourself in, so.
Certainly not. SSG with control of the Sunrise Bar and Office, so they can start their attack from the west side onto the bomb site. They don't have vertical control, though. This is definitely a very important difference between most of the double bar attacks we've been seeing from SSG and this Kitchen attack, is that it's a little bit more linear here for SSG. The roam is still well enforced on the top floor for DZ, and we're approaching the last minute of the round. This is not a great spot necessarily for SSG to be in, but they've also had a lot of miracle moments in positions like this in past rounds where SSG is up against the wall, 5v5, coming to the end of the round as the attackers, and then suddenly they just get 2 picks out of nowhere. Whether it's Rampy getting them, Bosco, Thinking Nade, there's Bosco. It's going to be Bosco this time, so there you go.
Space Station obviously doing a great job with their opening picks. This is very similar to the Tempo United game we saw at the very start with how these two teams stacked up in numbers. So you take out Skies, probably DarkZero's best hope at being able to win a round over the last, 10 rounds or so. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, probably 10 rounds.
Yeah, unfortunately for DarkZero, now you've got Mint a little bit worse for wear too. But he's going to return as much fire as he can inside of the lobby. One for Hyper, but then the run out gets caught by that Claymore. Down he goes. Mint pushes up, but that's Diffuser surrendered. So somebody from SSG is going to need to go get it. Bosco right now on a triple kill. He's streaking quite well. I think Eclipse might have just walked right through that air jab with no ill effect. It certainly appears that way. Diffuser going down, Hot and Cold gets splattered to the ground, and Fultz bursts on in at the right time to find Eclipse and Hot and 2. And Space Station have now been able to put together 4 of the last 5 rounds, make that 5 of the last 6, and they're on match point, 1 round away from jumping to an even greater lead now that they're 1 point ahead of DZ in the standings.
Yeah, so well, that round could have easily had been DarkZero's. We're seeing, again, every time SSG is allowed to set up, and this is the impressive bit, regardless of whether they have vertical control or not, if SSG is allowed to set up, they are winning these rounds, and DZ is not employing any tactics to hinder that setup. Top floor roam was irrelevant in that last round for the most part, because, well, how did Bosco get 3 kills? He sat outside front door and service entrance, and 3 people peeked him. How did Fultz get the last 2 kills? He injected himself in a strongly man-advantage situation into the bomb site and was in the right time at the right place and hit his shots. So mostly it's Bosco opening that up for SSG, but I say mostly when it comes to SSG's performance, also partially when it comes to DZ's. Really, it's those 3 people for getting exposed to Bosco. Now, why are they exposed to Bosco? It's because the other pressure is being applied by the rest of SSG. So you can't discount the team contribution here for SSG, that's for sure. But, I mean, and it had to have been Skies, too. 17 kills. The first death in the last round. It had to have been Skies. We'll see if DZ can put up a draw here. But there's no chance of them getting 3 points. Again, if this turns out to be a draw, then both of these teams, I think, will stay in the same position. Just go up 1 point. And, I mean, they're right next to each other in terms of points. So they'll both just be pushed up 1 and still be in the exact spot.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yes, well said. I think I know that reference. I don't remember it though.
If you're worried as a DarkZero fan, though, keep in mind that Rec is gonna play in the final matchup of the day against TSM. TSM have looked unbeatable, but there are still 3 points that Rec could be able to grab, which would put you, depending on the way that the tiebreaker goes down, would put Rec in either the same put the same position as DarkZero, but it might even give them the lead. So things would go from bad to worse in the standings for DarkZero, just as they go from bad to worse in this round. But there is some salvation. Eclipse is being guided by Hot and Cold on this cardiac sensor down below. It gets tossed up, the C4 does, but they'll wait until somebody walks over it. Eclipse, with his Mr. Fantastic arms, is able to grab it back down, as Bosco had traded some of his HP earlier on to take out Hyper. This is a kitchen defense, and there goes an EMP to try to take out some of the utility. Gunfire exchange from Eclipse towards Service, as there's some bucking going on above, and it's Rampy just opening up pretty small holes down into the site. He's not trying to tear away all of the roof for DarkZero, but at least enough of it to inflict some pain if they go to rotate.
Oh, there's the C4 from Houghton, though, and down goes Rampy. So suddenly, this is very drawable for DZ. Only a minute for SSG to use this vertical control to their advantage, but it's well established. Possibly more C4. Yeah, there's Eclipse's C4 in hand and ready to be used off of the call from Hot and Cold. You got to be careful of the tracers coming in from service entrance as well, though. There's a lot of points of exposure here for DZ, and they're all just clumped up in the site, which makes this a very dangerous round. It's only Skies outside, really. Possibly one other. C4 goes onto the bed, and it misses. That's huge. But Houghton gets Fultz as he rotates away from the C4. Also huge. DZ now in a really solid spot to lock this out in the last 30 seconds.
It depends on how much HP Mint has, as Bosco will choke on those toxic fumes when they get tossed down, should he go from that angle. This cardiac sensor still putting in work as SSG looks to jump in through the kitchen window. Pushing up into courtyard is Skies. He sees one of members of SSG, but can't connect onto it. It's the Nomad, unable to get Thinking Nate in time for him to take out Mint, but the trade is still coming on in. Lots of marks, but you have to be very wary if you're SSG. C4 goes out. It doesn't go anywhere. Plant going down, and it goes off quite successfully. No, it doesn't.
Oh!
Goes there with 2, and it looks like he gets the 3rd. A huge play from him, as Canadian was so close to getting that diffuser down before falling off. Bosco cleans up an absolutely astonishing round, and 7-5 for Space Station, and 3 big points for them on their climb to the top of NA standings.
Bosco just, what was that, a 4K? Bosco just dropped the whole round on his shoulders. He not only killed everyone to cover the plant, but he shot the C4 mid-air, guys. That C4 was going to win the round. It was going to end the round, draw for DarkZero, 1 point each team. And he saved the round by shooting in midair and then killing three people, I want to say 2 people at the minimum, right after, at least 3 in quick succession, all in that same pocket of time. And I just can't help but laugh a little bit, because Bosco handed around to Skies in the first half and then single-handedly secured 3 points in the final round when it mattered most. And I guess he was just being generous at the very beginning.
Bosco leading the way for his team, but Skies ending up with 18 kills. There isn't really much more you could have done if you're Skies to pull away from the rest of the pack and lead your team to victory. But as we've talked about many, many times, Rainbow Six Siege is not an individual player's game. It is a team game. And while DarkZero looked like a great team, they ended up faltering in the home stretch. And it was an attacker-favored Coastline. Attackers won 9 of the 12 rounds. And DarkZero just dropped 1 more defense than SSG did. That's really what it boiled down to. Unfortunate for them. Not exactly where you want to be if you're DarkZero. They've still only received 1 point in the last 4 matches. Through this split, they have 1 point out of a possible 9. It has not been exactly the start that they wanted to the second half of the split for a team that is usually known for being quite strong online. But if you're DarkZero, you've done well at the last 2 lands. Maybe you're now a LAN team. I would take that over an online team any day of the week. Our interview is ready for Space Station. We'll bring it up for you. Hello, Justin. How are you doing today? Congratulations on your victory.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going really well, man. Let's talk through Coastline a little bit here. It's a very frag-oriented map. Were you in any way, shape, or form frightened to go up on that map against a team like DZ?
No, not really. I think mostly because they are really known for being good in online best of ones when you have a long time to prepare. So this time we just wanted to surprise them with something that we knew that they probably wouldn't prepare. The last couple of weeks, teams have banned it first on them. So we were like, let's just take it to them, like their best map, and see if we can take them on it.
One of the operators that we've seen in 2 of your last 3 matches that showed up were Mira. Now, Mira has not been getting the same ban rate among certain teams as she used to. You think that's just a byproduct of where we're at with the meta, or do you think there's another reason for it?
I think it's because there's a lot of other things that need to take your ban over her. I think she's still insanely strong with the vision that she can give you, but I think it's kind of falling to the wayside for other things like vision or shields or stuff along that line.
One of the things that we picked up on was that the Maestro ban came out, and I want to know if this was your strategy behind it. Kix had speculated that the Maestro ban came out just because there's so much utility that can get soaked up now if you leave a Wamai, a Jaeger, a Maestro, and an Echo on the board. You think that's something that's hindered your team, given the fact with how strong Fultz is on Maestro and how well your team tends to do playing around that Maestro play of his?
No, I think that's really smart of Kix to pick up on, because I 100% agree. Between the combination of those, you can run into a lot of trouble. I personally, we just banned it because Hot and Cold's really good on it. I'll just give him a shout out. We wanted to take that away from him and make him play something different.
When you were attacking up against DarkZero, one of the things that we pointed out was that they lacked an awful lot of that utility soak. They weren't running a Wamai, they weren't running a Goyo, they weren't running a Castle, etc. Did that surprise you with where we are right now and with the way that the game is tending to be played by a lot of teams?
Not specifically on Coastline. Just because of the way it plays. I mean, like, you can stack a bunch of shields and stuff in, like, say delivery or whatever, but like if they take a buff, they're just gonna clear it, and like some of them they can even shoot. So not too much on this map would I say it matters. You can see like the other day with G2, you know, being able to just like slide through the map and do whatever they wanted with like all the fragging power that they have. This map's just like so particularly different than everything else in the map pool.
Now, the last question for you that I'm going to ask, and don't take this the wrong way, but after you cleaned house at the 6 Invitational and won the whole darn thing, you have required 36 of all 36 rounds that have been played so far online. Is there some struggling? Is there a championship hangover, or do you think that's just how close North America is?
I think it's our struggles online. Personally, I think we still don't play as good as we do on LAN online, but I think that we're just like so good as a team right now that we're able to come over some of it. The first couple, I really believe the first 3 rounds should have gone our way. We should have started that game 3-0, but like we got the 2 picks we got were just like straight off of VOD info. We got 2 picks like instantly off the bat. Still lost that round. Like I think we still struggle with like some of the late round calls and some of like, you know, you can get away with stuff online that you can't really at LAN, and that kind of punishes our play style. And so I think that's why like it's so close for us.
Well, as always, Justin, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. I don't care what circumstances it's in. You look
too,
great.
buddy.
I hope you're doing great. Anything to say at the end of this interview before we give it back to Kix and I to show up the MVP on the screen?
Yeah, everyone that's here watching, I appreciate it. Thank you for supporting Rainbow Six, no matter what team that you follow. Thank you for being here. And last thing I want to add to that is make sure you're staying safe. Stay inside.
It's great advice under any circumstances, but especially under these. Always a pleasure, Justin. Good luck in your match on Wednesday.
All right, thanks.